What's up guys, it's ReptiWorks Aquatics. Do you have a sick snake? Well, you might want to take it to the vets. And if that's the case and you have to give it injections, I'm going to show you how to do that. So what I have here is a albino Darwin carpet python who has a respiratory infection. Now this is due to cold weather and also moisture in the air, which can happen quite frequently during the winter, especially with albinos. I was talking to my vet, obviously when I took him there, and yeah, my vet was telling me that a lot of albino snakes have come in this winter because it's been a bit colder than usual. So yeah, the problem is albino reptiles in general are more prone to problems because an albino animal is an unnatural mutation. They're going to have deficiencies and also going to have a weaker immune system than a normal species or a non-albino species would have. So yeah, he has said to me that he did see a lot of he has seen a lot of albino animals come in this year with very problems, but the majority of them are respiratory infections due to the moisture in the air, and it's quite cold at the moment. So yeah, anyway, I have to give him an injection every 3 days for 3 weeks of antibiotics. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. I'll also keep you guys updated on his progress. He is actually showing signs of recovery already. It's been about a week and a half and he's already noticeably better. I mean, he's still not 100%, but he's a lot better because with respiratory infections of reptiles, they get a lot of fluid building up on their lungs and it ends up in their mouth and in their throat as well. So that's reduced quite a lot. So yeah, the antibiotics are working, but I'm just going to show you how it's all done. Okay, so obviously I've got my antibiotics and a syringe. So yeah, I'm just going to put some antibiotics in this syringe. Depending on what antibiotics you're given will depend on the dose rate. The one I'm using, it's 1 line per 100 grams. So you weigh the animal, and if it's a 200 gram animal, that's 2 lines. So yeah, this albino Darwin gets 2 lines of antibiotics. So that's the antibiotics there. Okay, so with putting this stuff into a needle, obviously you don't want any air in the needle, so you press it all the way down first. So we stick it in there. Now, because I'm giving him 2 lines, what you want to do to avoid getting your bubbles in here is draw past 2. So even though I'm giving him 2 lines, I will draw in about 5, roughly. So I'll hold it up close so you guys can see. So, now I can't see. But pretty much I'll draw in about 5 lines or so, or just past 2 pretty much. Then I will squeeze back into the bottle the lines I don't need until I get to 2. That way you don't get any bubbles. So I just have to fix that. I didn't quite go far enough. There we go. And that's it. Okay, so now we've got him on the table. I've got a pillowcase down because I'm going to use that for this as well, which you'll see in a sec. With giving pythons, or any snake for that matter, an injection, you want to basically inject. You can inject anywhere 2/3 down the body. So the first third of the body, so the head to say, I guess about there, you don't want to inject. Anywhere past that point, you can do the injection. Now with an injection on a python, you don't want to just stab straight down, or basically straight in. You can damage them that way. You want to go on an angle, which I'll show you as well. And the thing with giving any reptile injection compared to, say, a mammal, is their skin is obviously much thicker, so the needle doesn't go in quite as easily. So you have to be a little careful. You got to press a little harder than what you would with a mammal just to get it through the scales, but still not pressing too hard and trying to keep a bit of control with your pressure so you don't go too far when it eventually does pop through the skin. It's kind of tricky and it varies from reptile to reptile. All the scale structures are different. I mean, I've injected lizards and turtles in the past, and like skinks are quite easy, dragons are quite difficult. Turtles' skin's quite thick too. Snakes aren't too bad, but again, it depends on what type of snake and how big it is. Little hatchlings, a little easier. Anyways, so yeah, we'll get into this now. So you want to try and keep him as still as possible, and it is difficult with a snake, but that's why I've got the pillowcase. I found if you just cover his head, basically the first 2/3 of his, cover most of the body up, just leave the bit that you want to inject sticking out. So I'm just going to inject in his tail half. don't do it on the top of the body, that's where his spine is. You want to aim for the side area where it's a bit softer. So I've found I use my hand here to keep this part of his body pinned without putting too much pressure as to hurt him, just to keep him kind of secure. He's still going to move regardless. And at the same time, so I use my wrist to kind of pin him, and I'll get this part of his body around my middle finger like so. As you can see, he knows what's happening. He's already putting up a fight because he's been through this a few times now. So I get that like that. And as I said, you don't want to go straight down. You got to go on an angle against the scales. Try to get the needle between two scales if you can. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. If you are squeamish, probably best to look away for this part of the video. Okay, and he is going to flinch. That is inevitable, but you kind of have to just do it. If you hesitate and you keep jabbing every time he flinches and then pulling back, it's just going to stress the animal more. So straight in, under the scale, not too deep. Squeeze the needle out slowly and pull it out nice and slow. And that's pretty much it. You're done. Let him go. So obviously he did flinch quite a bit with that because he is only a small, yeah, now he just wants to get away now because obviously he didn't like that. He's only a small snake. And I mean, this needle, it's the smallest that they could give me, but I mean, for his size, it probably would hurt a fair bit more than it would on a bigger snake. So yeah, you want to make it as quick as possible, which is why the first time you inject a reptile, I guess it is inevitable that you're going to flinch and you're going to hesitate and hold back a bit. You might jab it a few times too many before you actually get the needle through the skin, because they flinch and you don't expect that sometimes, I guess, and it throws you off. But yeah, if you can just get it in the first go, it's over and done with as quickly as possible. It's much less stressful for them as well. And I mean, look, he is getting better. The thing is, as I was saying before, albinos are prone to more problems because they're an albino and they have a much weaker immune system, especially when they're hatchlings. Alright guys, so that's basically how you give a snake an injection. It's never fun. I've done it many times, many different reptiles over the years. It's never fun because you know they don't like it and it's hurting them, and if you truly care about your animals like I do, it always is going to upset you doing that. But it's a necessary thing for their recovery. Obviously, with these injections, they're a one-time thing, throw them away once you use them. Wash your hands after you've done this, just because a lot of reptile diseases can be contagious. Respiratory infections, not so much, but reptiles can sometimes have more than one illness and it's not always detected. So you want to always, when you got a sick reptile of any sort, isolate it from all your other reptiles, and if you're handling it or using any equipment that is used with that reptile for cleaning its enclosure or feeding it or whatever, wash that stuff before you use it on your other reptiles. There are other snake viruses. There's one particular snake virus going around at the moment my vet was telling me about. I can't remember what it's called. It's got a really complicated name, but he says he's seen a lot of it this winter, and he's had a lot of his clients lose a lot of snakes from it. They'll start off with one sick snake and they'll lose 6 to 8 to 10 plus snakes in like a course of a few months from this virus. It's a relatively new virus that, there's no real cure that's been made for it. It's got about a 95% mortality rate, so you've got to be careful. And being contagious, you've got to isolate your reptile and wash your hands after touching it before you go touch your other animals. So this guy does seem to just have a respiratory infection though, so I'm not too worried about that. But I mean, I've still isolated him and I still have to wash my hands after handling him just to be safe. So also one of the other things you can do to help speed up your reptile's recovery from things like this is keep them as warm as possible, obviously without overheating them, because reptiles are cold-blooded. If they're kept warm, everything goes faster. They're going to be able to metabolize these, whatever medication you're using for them. It's going to go through their system and metabolize much faster if they're kept warm, so they're going to recover faster. So, and on top of that, respiratory infection, cold weather is what basically caused this problem. So you want to keep them as warm as possible. Thing is, I've only had this snake for a little while, and my vet reckons, given the time frame I've had him, it most likely already had some sort of a sickness when I picked it up, but it was just such it was at its very early stages that it was undetectable to the naked eye pretty much. Because yeah, when I bought him, he seemed fairly okay. He did seem a lot more docile than all my other snakes, but I didn't think much of it because every hatchling is different. You do just get some that are like that sometimes. But after maybe a week or two of having him, I did notice the little quirks that I guess did raise a few eyebrows with him, to just keep an eye on it at the least. He just seemed the way he would sit sometimes, it just, like he'd always sit with his head pointing up, or at least on a more upward angle than most of my other snakes usually sit. So it did strike me as a little different. I just thought it was a quirk of his at first. He was still eating fine, he was still behaving relatively normal. But then over time, he started to have his head up, like looking upwards more often and more often, until that's how he'd always sit. And then he went off his food as well. So that's when I took him to the vets. And yeah, I did also notice as well, he was getting a bit of fluid and mucus buildup in his mouth. I checked inside his mouth and there was a bit more mucus in there than what there should be. And he did make his breathing was a bit wheezy sounding as well, like there was fluid obstructing his breathing as well. So yeah, but look, sense on this antibiotics, I can even see now he's sitting normally, his head's down flat like it should be. So he's getting better. It's been about a week and a half. I got another week and a half of antibiotics to go, and I'll keep you guys posted on how he goes. But yeah, so you definitely have to be careful when buying hatchlings, because especially like during colder weathers when they're for sale, yeah, they can be more prone to issues during that time of the year, because a small bodied animal is going to basically chill and get too cold much quicker than a larger bodied animal. Depending on what the reptile is and where it's from too, some are more tolerant to cold than others, but it's not just so much cold, it's cold and moisture in the air. I don't blame the breeder I got this guy off, because he didn't breed this snake himself. He got it from one of his breeder friends. He only had it for maybe a day or two before I ended up buying it, so he didn't really have time to be fully checked out, I suppose. And I personally, when I buy new snakes, especially hatchlings, I give them space for at least a week or two. I don't really handle them or touch them or move them around much at all, because I like to let them just settle in and adjust properly. But at the end of the day, I did notice, and I got him to the vets, and now he's getting better. Which, it doesn't really matter how good you are. When you're keeping large amounts of animals, they get sick. It just happens. The same as us. We can live the healthiest lifestyle possible. We're still going to get colds and flus and infections from time to time. So yeah, it's just a matter of being able to spot that and act on it as quickly as possible. The other tricky thing with reptiles and viruses and infections and diseases and stuff, they hide it very well. Reptiles do not show signs of weakness or sickness or any sort of problems until they're really sick, and they can't hide it at all, because it's down to their basic primal instinct. When you're living in the wild and you're sick or injured or there's something wrong with you, if you let it be seen, you're a target for every other predator in that area. You're going to be the first one picked off because you're the easy pick. You're weak, you're sick, something's going to eat you. So reptiles do hide their sickness very, very well. They don't show any signs of it until they're really sick, and by then, depending on what the disease is, sometimes it can be too late if you don't catch it early. So you do have to be really observant of your reptiles. That's basically it, you guys. I hope this video was helpful to anyone who's having issues with maybe a snake that's not acting quite right or sick. If there is any sign of anything wrong with any of your reptiles, please get them to the vets ASAP. It's better to be safe than sorry, because like I said, once they start showing signs of sickness, it's usually very hard to reverse. Alright, that's it for me, you guys. I'm going to pop this guy back on his heat mat so he can warm up again. Leave a like and give us a subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next vid. Cheers, bye.